All right, guys. So, what's up? It's Coach James again. So, this is another video that I'm recording from my group. Things a little bit different today. I started off with an article that was pretty interesting to me. This article says the nutrient intake and status in adults consuming plant-based diets compared to meat eaters. It's a systematic review. And the reason why I thought this was interesting was because they had an environmental, but also like an economic standpoint on it. So they're obviously pushing towards, away from meat, closer to plants, but they do a really good job of covering both and labeling the differences, the benefits, and the detriments of each of them. So where they dial in really well, and then what they, fall short on. So I kind of just want to take you through there, and then I've got a bunch of my own questions that I've made, stuff that I wanted clarity on, and then answers from my point of view and my certification on how I can answer that and make it a little more clear. So we'll just start it off here. Um, it begins. Health authorities increasingly recommend a shift towards a more plant-based diet, characterized by a higher intake of fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and nuts, while reducing the consumption of red meats and maintaining moderation in dairy, eggs, poultry, and fish. This dietary approach is not only seen as beneficial for individual health, but also as environmentally stable or sustainable. To better understand the nutritional implications of plant-based diets, a systematic review of observational and intervention studies conducted between 2000 and 2020 compared the nutrient intake and status in adult populations following plant-based diets, mainly vegetarian and vegan, with those of meat eaters. So this review, encompassing 141 studies, primarily in Europe, Southeast Asia, North America, they revealed several key findings. Protein intake was observed to be lower in individuals adhering to plant-based diets compared to that of meat eaters, but they remained within recommended levels. On the positive side, those on plant-based diets exhibited higher intakes of intake levels of fiber, polyunsaturated fats, folate, vitamin C, vitamin E, and magnesium. However, they had lower intakes of EPA and DHA, both essential omega-3s, commonly found in fish, in comparison to the meat-eating group. The concerns were raised about the nutrient status of individuals following the plant-based diets, vegans in particular, demonstrated the lowest intakes of vitamin B12, calcium, iodine, along with lower iodine status and reduced bone mineral density across all dietary patterns, including vegan, vegetarian, and meat-based diets. They were identified nutrient they identified nutrient inadequacies. Meat eaters, for instance, were at a risk of inadequate intakes of fiber, polyunsaturated fats, alpha linolenic acid, ALA, folate, vitamin D, vitamin E, calcium, and magnesium. In light of these findings, the study underscores the importance of public health strategies that encourage a transition to a balanced diet, incorporating a variety of nutrient-dense plant foods. The transition can be facilitated through consumer education, food fortification, and potentially supplementation when necessary. Recognizing the dual benefits of improved health and reduced environmental impact, promoting the adoption of plant-based diets aligned with the broader efforts to enhance overall well-being and sustainability. So right there, that's going to be the end of the intro of the article. They are pretty much highlighting the benefits of the plant-based diets and the vegan diets and meat-based diets, but trying to shift away from the meat-based diets. And going further into it, it kind of raises awareness around like the strengths of each of the eating styles, because some people adhere to these as more of almost like a religious preference. Like if you have a religion and you follow it, you show up to church every Sunday, you're going to follow that. Some people they stick really strictly to certain styles of eating, almost in a similar way. And then there's some that are just, they'll eat whatever. And so going forward, they came up with the idea that for energy and macronutrients, energy intake was similar across all dietary patterns. Compared to meat eaters, the average protein, EPA, and DHA intake was lower in vegetarians and particularly vegans. Yet intake of fiber, polyunsaturated fatty acids, and ALA was higher in plant-based dietary patterns. So as far as micronutrients, so we're talking vitamins and minerals, vegetarians and vegans generally had lower levels of vitamin B12, vitamin D, iodine, and status and higher rates of bone turnover markers compared to meat eaters. So what I want to kind of narrow this down a little bit. We're going to talk about the challenges of each of the eating styles. So when it comes down to meat eaters, the challenges that they're going to face are lower levels of fiber, lower levels of polyunsaturated fatty acids, the ALA, specifically in men. Women don't tend to face that same struggle for some reason. Vitamin D, E, folate, calcium, magnesium were all pretty low. What they did really well was protein intake, niacin, B12, and zinc. Challenges for the plant-based eaters. Protein intake was lower in people following plant-based diets compared to the meat eaters, but well within the recommended intake levels. So what they were low in was the fiber, EPA, DHA. Those are the fatty acids we were talking about, omega-3s. Vitamin B12, D, E, calcium, iodine, and iron, but mainly in women. And then lastly, zinc. They were all pretty low, but they were high in polyunsaturated fatty acids, which would be considered like the good fats, the healthy fats, the ones that we want the most of, ALA, vitamin C, folate, and magnesium. Those were all pretty high. And as far as vegans, they were low in calcium, iodine, iron, but typically again in women, zinc, and then vitamins B12, D, and then the EPA and DHA. But they were high in fiber, polyunsaturated fatty acids, the ALA, B1, B6, vitamin C, vitamin E, folate, and magnesium. But then kind of narrowing down where the circles kind of line up. If we looked at everything as in three circles of three different eating groups, where they all cross over, they do have a shared deficiency. And that was narrowed down to be vitamin D and calcium. And as far as this, to kind of describe what those would be, the vitamin D would be more of a fat soluble vitamin. It's long been known to help the body absorb and retain calcium and phosphorus. Both are critical for building bone. A few foods naturally contain vitamin D, though some foods are fortified with the vitamin. The best place to get vitamin D is actually through our ultraviolet rays. So you step outside and get some sunlight because the skin will produce this naturally based on the interaction that occurs with the sunlight. And as far as calcium's absorption is dependent on the vitamin D. Since having too low of levels can prevent us from absorbing as much calcium as we're going to need. So calcium can be found in a lot of dairy products, and then also supplementation if we're too low. Side note on those, I would avoid taking anything vitamin D supplement with the calcium supplement because it's been known to increase the risk of stroke. So as long as, you get these from the most natural sources, there should be zero risk at all. All right, moving forward. So we leaned pretty heavily in this article away from meats. Because with meats, they were talking about how meats in general were typically higher in saturated fats. And saturated fats are going to be known as more of the bad fats, the ones that we want to stay away from. In conclusion, when it comes to fats, we really want to get a balance of both. It's necessary for a cellular level, and it's necessary for processes that are useful to the body. So one of the questions we'd have is, are meats themselves high in saturated fats? Some meats are, especially the red meats. Eating a lot of saturated fats can raise your cholesterol levels in your blood, and having high cholesterol raises your risk of coronary heart disease. the type of meat product you choose and how you cook it can make a big difference in the fat content as well. For example, red meats will be high in saturated fats, whereas turkey, it's a nice white meat. It's low in fats, easily digestible, rich in B vitamins and iron, and includes all your essential amino acids. Yeah, so that's pretty much the difference between red and white meats. Let's go a little bit further. So we're talking about fats here, right? So how can we tell if a fat is polyunsaturated? If it's going to be one of the good types of fats. So your polyunsaturated fats are the fat molecules that have more than one unsaturated carbon bonds in the molecule. Oils that contain this polyunsaturated fats are typically liquid at room temperature, but they tend to solidify when they're chilled. So we can see a lot of that happens in avocado and olive oil. Those are my two favorites for polyunsaturated. They're considered the healthy and good fats. And then the way to tell if a fat is saturated, they're typically solid at room temperatures. And they only get more solid at the chilled temperatures. The most common sources of saturated fats are usually meats and dairy products. I think as far as oils that you can use to cook with, for the most part, coconut oil and margarine and some butters are pretty solid even at room temperatures. So those would still be considered saturated fats. Another thing that the article covered a lot was fiber. And fiber is important for a whole lot of things. And as far as going down the list, just to make it kind of like, put it all together. It can help with blood sugar regulation, better gut health. It can help with weight control, heart health. It actually, the right kind of dietary fiber can bring down your cholesterol levels. So if you ever have the LDL, it's on really high on the scale. That's your low density lipoprotein. So when that gets too high, that's what our cholesterol is. When doctors say your cholesterol is high, they're typically referring to your bad cholesterol. So to bring that down in a natural way, fiber helps with that as well. It helps with healthy digestion, normalizes bowel movement, possible cancer prevention. That one was interesting. Reduce diabetes risk because it helps regulate the way your body breaks down sugar. It can help control your body weight. Help prevent cardiovascular disease, leads to a longer life, and it can also make your intestines move faster as far as in the digestion process, and in turn can lower your risk of developing hemorrhoids. So fiber is super important and found in a lot of different foods. And then finally, this whole article seemed to revolve around protein, and so the next question normally would have was what makes protein so important? Protein is an important part of a healthy diet. They're made up of chemical building blocks known as amino acids, and your body uses these amino acids to build and repair muscles, bones, and to make hormones and enzymes. And as far as enzymes, there are what our body produces in our saliva. Digestion starts right here at the mouth before anything else, and that will send the signals to your body to produce the enzymes needed to break down your proteins, your carbs, or your fats. And that pretty much wraps up most things. So I want to leave on an ending thought here. So increasing the consumption of a variety of plant-based foods in combination with food fortification and supplementation where needed is recommended to have the most sustainable and nutritionally adequate diets. And what that means is to get a more idea of total health, it's most beneficial to try to get a range of all types of foods. Although if we're going to lean one way or the other, if we want to do all these plant-based diets or vegan diets or meat-based diets, we got to understand that that's only going to be an incomplete part of the picture. So the suggestion would be to find your style of eating, find out where you're weak on, and try to supplement with a lot of fresh fruits and vegetables, some good carbs, complex and simple, and some good healthy fats. Although for eating in 80% healthy and supplementing 20% of the fun foods, we should have most everything we need. and then we just, you can take a vitamin to supplement the rest, So I'm going to leave the discussion here, and I'm going to open it up to questions. All right, but before I do that, actually, guys, thank you for watching this. I'm going to leave this for my group, but if you have any questions at all, go ahead and leave it in the comments, and just send them to me. Thanks for watching.